Woohoo! Welcome, welcome, welcome. It's Coach Les and Mr. Yarwood. We are here back with Matt Chat live. We are on Facebook. We are on LinkedIn. We're on YouTube and on X. So welcome, 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 everybody. Thank you for joining us. And today we are talking about leadership in martial arts, not only about being in charge or commanding others. It's about embodying the principles of discipline, humility, and respect while guiding others through their journey in martial arts. Leadership is cultivated through experience, example, and a commitment to helping others grow. Here's how leadership is developed and demonstrated in martial arts. And we started last week, leading by example, number one. Number two, mentoring and teaching others. Number three, creating a positive and supportive environment. Number four, embodying discipline and consistency. Number five, inspiring confidence in others. Number six, maintaining humility. Number seven, handling adversity and stress. Woo, woo. Number eight, fostering a growth mindset. Number nine, encouraging accountability. And today, we're going to start off with respecting tradition and the art. Leadership in martial arts is about preserving the traditions and values of the discipline. Leaders often serve as guardians of the art's history, ensuring that the techniques, etiquette, and philosophy are passed down properly to future generations. They understand that leadership involves respecting the past while guiding the future. So with that, I want to pass it over to Mr. Yarwood and have him get started. We just came out of this amazing weekend of instructing, so I think we're going to be mixing in some of that. So I'm really looking forward to this show today, Mr. Yarwood.
Yes, sir. Actually, we're going to start off with talking about it. We at Instructor College this weekend, our Grandmaster and his wife, Master Emma, were in town, and Senior Master Erdman, to help us become better instructors. One of the things we talked about was, we can call it tradition, whatever you want to call it, but we played a little game where we had an instructor make up a quick form in private with somebody, and then that person is supposed to exactly replicate it to teach it to the next person, and so on and so on. It's basically like the phone tag game or whatever it's called, and just to show us what happens when things aren't, tradition isn't followed, replication isn't followed, whatever. The original intent of what was taught and what was created is no longer being taught because it's been changed and watered down and diluted so much. So it just proved to us that in order for us to maintain the traditions and values that we have in our organization in particular, and in life in general, is paying attention to what came before us, who provided those things for us, so we can move those forward and pass them on to the next generation. As instructors, it's our job to teach that next generation, right? We got taught by our instructors, and then we pass it on to our students, who then ultimately become instructors and pass it on to their students. So if we're teaching them incorrectly, or if we're not having the discipline to really study where we came from, where our traditions started, and pass those traditions on, they're going to get diluted, they're going to get lost. And that's, if we're saying we're good leaders, but we're not doing the work to help preserve the traditions, then we're not doing our part, because ultimately, we're trying to pass it on to the next generation.
Well, and, it was interesting. I got to share a little bit about my personal experience with this whole, what I call the telephone exercise. And although the telephone exercise is not as powerful as doing what we did, because we were involved with body mechanics, right? And we all know that 85 to 95% of our communication is nonverbal. The exercise that I've done, and I've done it with PhDs, that really, it was so much fun, because I was able to prove to people, look, really to listen requires an amazing opportunity of setting aside all the filters that we have from the past about anything, and then having a free and clear mind to be able to hear what's being said. So much so that in the conversation and the exercise that I've done in the past, we take a sentence and you give it to them on a little piece of paper, and they read it to the person, whisper it in their ear. That person then whispers what they think they've heard to the next person, to the next, to the next, to the next. And I did it with 12 PhDs in a room of 400 people. And the last person's goal was to go and write it on the board. And what they wrote on the board had 0 words from the 12 original words. And in doing the exercise this weekend with the martial arts, what I saw happen was things like turn left here, and it was demonstrated, became turn right, because our brains sometimes mirror things versus see them and duplicate them. So it as an instructor, we have to be really careful about that from the front of the room in martial arts. As a leader and a speaker, in that instance, what it gave me as strength to everybody in the room, the 400 people in the room, was if they're not listening, the tendency is to lose, and in this case, up to 100% of the message.
The group that I was in, what they did was one person at the beginning created it was 8 moves, an 8-move form. And then they taught it to the next person, and then that person taught it to the next person. I think we had 12 in our group. So the 12th person then came out and demonstrated it to the whole group, and then the person who created it demonstrated it. In our group, I think out of the 8 moves, 1 was the same. The other ones were similar, but the wrong direction, and it didn't really look anything like what it started out to be. So it was just a lesson in understanding that as a leader, we need to be paying attention to detail, understanding what we're learning and how to process it and pass it forward. And if we're not doing that, if we're just kind of going by what we think we saw versus actually finding out what we did see, it changes everything going forward.
Yeah. So when it comes to, this respecting tradition and the art, there really is something to be said with the training and practicing that it requires to do form work.
Definitely. Because it's not just a physical thing, it's a mental thing too.
and you're fighting all of that mental stuff that's preconceived. And then you're fighting your own humanity inside of that. Right? Because you look at something and and by the way, I just want people to understand this. I don't care how old you are. I'm 61, and there are kids in the class that are 5 years old. And from 5 to 61, we both do it. I'm going to be the first to admit, I've done it many times. And when I was copying the person that was showing me in the room, I literally, when he did it, I literally had him switch places with me so that I could do it where he did it, so that my memory allowed me to do what he did. And then I had him watch me and say, yep, that's it. Because I knew if I stood where I stood in the beginning, I would do it differently. And I knew if I didn't have him look at it at least once, because we did it 3 times back and forth, the whole thing. And after he had taught me the moves. And then I had him look at it. Because I know the failure that my brain has to keep up with that opportunity for the art of what he was creating. And, in respecting tradition and the art, it not only do I see respecting tradition and art in martial arts here, but this is in anything that's out there. So, yeah, I was super excited. So thank you.
Yes, sir.
Promoting integrity and ethics. Martial arts leaders demonstrate integrity by making ethical decisions both on and off the mat. They hold themselves and their students to high standards of honesty, fairness, and responsibility. And they ensure that the dojo remains a place where respect and ethical behavior are upheld.
Yes.
Fire away, Mr. Yarwood.
Well, I mean, when we talk about integrity, there's several ways we can approach it with what we do specifically on the mats, right? Obviously, when we talk to our students, the main part of integrity is doing the right thing, essentially, right? And more importantly, doing the right thing when nobody else is around to see you do it. So making right decisions to do the things that you're supposed to do. But we also talk about integrity in your training. And if we can kind of go back to the tradition part, when you're training properly, doing the things the best that you can, giving it 100% to your training, you're going to become much better, right? If you're just kind of going through the motions and you get there and the instructor's doing it this way, and when you're doing it that way, you lose the integrity of the training, and it's something that you see a lot, and it can be laziness, it can be tiredness, it can be whatever. But ultimately, if you're not doing everything the way you're supposed to be doing it, you're going to lose integrity, not only in what you're doing, right, or in who you are, but what you're doing when you're training, right? You lose the integrity of the form, you lose the integrity of your attitude. There's so many things that go along with it. So integrity is a huge part, that something that runs through everything that we do, and it's a vital component to our training on the floor, our training, wherever we go. So we take it with us all the time, and it's important to maintain that, so you are always doing your best to do the right thing. Bring.
All right. So for me, for most of you will know that as an integrity coach, it has always been my belief that as Coach Les, all of the mistakes and humanity that I make is an opportunity for training and development. And to be able to demonstrate that, share that, be mindful that that exists for me is a really great opportunity, I think, to be able to support people, my clients, students around me, because they look and go, wow, this guy, look at what he's dealing with. He's this age and he's still dealing with and being responsible for ethics and mindfulness and all of those things and those pieces of integrity that make a big, big difference. And for me, integrity is simple, and it didn't always occur this way. Integrity is not necessarily keeping your word. It's honoring your word and creating an empowering possibility for conversation. That what that looks like in a very simple way is, if I know I'm going to be late somewhere because I got up late or I left a meeting late, the minute I know that I'm going to be late, I get in communication with the person that I'm going to be late to. And once they know that I'm going to be late and they've heard that and experienced that, then the next question is for me to say, what can I be responsible for in being late that I can measure up, level up? And invariably, creating that alone just that way and asking that question gives a vulnerability, gives an availability to be heard that is miraculous. And I'm super excited, super privileged and honored to be able to be standing in that kind of space with integrity and ethics. All right, to move on to number 13.
I think we jumped over 11.
Oh, we did.
Right?
Yes, we did. Let's go back to 11. Conflict resolution and fairness. Leaders are expected to handle conflicts within the dojo or between students, whether it's a disagreement, an issue with technique, or a personality clash. Martial arts leaders are trained to approach problems with fairness, mediation skills, and a focus on maintaining harmony and respect.
So we don't have many conflicts with in between our students. Our conflicts are typically our students having outside the dojo, right? In bullying situations, where they're having to deal with somebody who's messing with them or physically harming them or calling them names or whatever. When we talk about conflict resolution with them, it's how do they not just get out of that situation, but how do they handle the situation going forward? It's like they're going to be dealing with somebody who maybe is always every single day messing with them, right? And we find a way, teach them a way to be able to handle that situation in such a manner that it's going to be, they're not going to be harmed. They're going to be, they're going to find themselves in a place where they're not concerned about it. Maybe they're dealing with the person who is creating that issue for them. So we give them tools to be able to not just physically handle themselves, but how do they use their words to deflect or bring down the situation to a calm place where there's no issues with physical stuff. So teaching them conflict resolution is important for them to be able to handle themselves when they're at school or wherever they are, because it's that's where they're dealing with it. We don't really have student issues within the school. It's usually individual issues that they're dealing with outside of the school. Now, when it comes to fairness, fairness is I think very subjective, because what's fair to one person might not be fair to another. When I look at fairness, it's all about making sure everybody's getting out of our program what they signed up for, right? What is it that they're looking for, and is their training, is their understanding of what they're doing fair? From an example of I struggle with the word with fairness because it's such a it's a word that's like, who knows, right? Who knows what fairness means? Yeah, it's such a big word. It's got so many things that can go along with it, but I try and treat my students in a fair manner, but sometimes you have to deal with things that maybe they don't feel as fair. Maybe they were in a situation where they had to do something that they didn't want to do, but it's because somebody else did something they weren't supposed to do. Maybe the whole class gets push-ups because one kid wasn't doing what they were supposed to do. Is that fair? I don't know. Some people might think it is. Some people might think it isn't. but it's how I deal with things, right? If we're all here together doing what we're supposed to do, we're not going to have issues. But if somebody's goofing around doing things they're not supposed to do, then everybody gets to, I don't want to say suffer, but they get to do stuff that they didn't necessarily want to do. So I look at it from a standpoint of fairness is very subjective.
And for me, I'm just sitting here reading this, again, and I look, every time we have an issue and we look and see, is it fair or where we're dealing on it, we're looking through the lens of our own life and our own experiences. And I think one of the things that I see in martial arts is, and in leaders in martial arts, looking at something through that fairness, through their skills, is an ability to see integrity, an ability to see the workability of something, the ability to see the nuances that are existing back and forth between two people, because they see it between multiple people every day that they're instructing. And they can see when there's an upset in the group, how that takes the whole group out of harmony, how it takes it all completely out of balance. And when then it comes time to, so what I'm looking for, demonstrate or align with a point of view, it's, how do we take that point of view and say, look, this is where this comes from. This is why. Here are the benefits, and here are the things that have happened over the past to have this point of view be heard this particular way, and literally have to direct somebody to look at the challenges of their own focus. And that is such a profound privilege, because then you're dealing with somebody that has spent, like yourself, 13 years?
15 years.
15 years filtering all this stuff day in and day out, plus 6 to 8 conferences every year, filtering all of that, right? I think that gives you a really powerful perspective when you're looking at things. So that's what I have to say about that.
That's all I've got to say about that.
Training future leaders. Oof. Now, here you go. This is literally was another 90% of the whole weekend. Ultimately, martial arts leaders also focus on developing future leaders, training those up under you to replace you. By giving advanced students opportunities to teach, lead drills, or take on more responsibility, they encourage the next generation to step into leadership roles themselves. Through these qualities, leadership in martial arts is about much more than simply being in charge. It's about inspiring others, setting a positive example, and contributing to the growth and well-being of the entire community. Leadership is a key aspect of martial arts that extends far beyond technique or physical ability, deeply influencing the personal development of practitioners. I want to say that last part again. Leadership is a key aspect of martial arts that extends far beyond technique or physical ability.
Uh-oh. Looks like we lost him. I don't know where he went. But I'll keep talking. So training future leaders, that's kind of kind of the crux of everything that I do with our instructor program, because when I'm training them, hey, there he is. We lost you for a second.
Yep, go ahead. I'm not sure.
My instructor program is based on what our organization has created called the NXT program. And we spent, like we just talked about this weekend, 10 hours in training of learning how to become a better instructor, how to influence and teach our kids. And I mean, there's so many things that went into this weekend. I mean, it's beyond the time that we have to talk about, but I've become very much aware of the effect that I can have on my students based on my actions, based on what I say to them, based on how I treat them, based on what I teach them. And I've really started this, even it's amplified from this weekend, but I've really started to recognize the impact I can have on these lives. Some of my we've added a few kids to our program, and what I look at is my job is to teach them not just to be instructors, but to be leaders, to be that kid who steps up and helps a kid who's being bullied, that kid who steps up in class and helps the teacher with whatever, that kid who's helping other kids in school, whether it's a new kid who needs to find where their classes are, or a kid who's struggling in math and you're good at it. You sit down and say, hey, how can I help you? They step up at home by helping out around the house. Maybe they're old enough to drive and they take their younger siblings to school so mom can get to work on time or whatever. They're just doing those extra things beyond what we're doing on the mats. They're learning how to step into that role and lead in the community, lead in their family, lead in their own lives, and to be able to affect and impact that next person that they touch, right? The fact that I have a role to play in that, I take very, very seriously, and understanding that how I deal with them, how I interact with them, how I teach them, how I lead them affects how they lead, how they impact, and how they teach. And if they're learning from me, I have to make sure that what I'm teaching them is the right way, at least the way I see it. And because I'm setting the example, and if I'm not a good example to them, they're not going to be a good example to that other person that they're impacting. So for me, it's probably the most important thing that I do is to be able to teach them what I believe is the right way to interact with others, to lead, to impact, to do all these things, because someday they're going to be doing it. And if they learn it the right way the first time and they learn it over and over and over again the right way, it impacts those around them as well. The ripple effect.
Well, and I think the one mainstream in this too, and what I like about everything that I heard from what you just said and everything that I learned this weekend, is the humanity that is allowed. And when I say that, I mean the ability to make mistakes, the ability to perform over and over and over and over and over and over and over, minimizing the mistakes along the way. And with that repetitiveness, we start to see the benefits of training and development.
Yeah, humility is huge in what I do. If I don't have the humility to know that, hey, I'm going to make a mistake here and there, I got to recognize that. I got to own up to it, learn from it, and move on from it. And if I don't do that, if I think that I don't make mistakes, and I genuinely believe that, then I'm getting in my own way and I'm getting in my students' way, because I'm affecting them negatively, and I don't want to do that. So for me to be able to admit, hey, you know what, I screwed up. Here's what happened. Here's how I'm going to fix it. Here's how we're going to move forward. And you do that when you send that message to your students, they recognize that they can learn from their mistakes as well. And when they make them, they're less likely to have them have such a negative impact on what they're doing. Because ultimately we all make mistakes. It's just how do we address them? How do we learn from them? And how do we move on from them? I mean, I've never made a mistake myself, but I think that might be true. If I were to make a mistake, that's how I would handle it.
That's so awesome.
The theory seems good enough, so we'll apply it.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate today's conversation, and
yes, sir.
I'm really appreciative of how we've gone through these leadership steps, and it was no accident for me that, of course, we have Instructor College the week,
yep.
Between the two.
Yep, definitely.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Mr. Yarwood, and we'll be back here next week for those of you listening. What are we covering next week? Do you know yet?
I do not know yet. I'm working on that, but it's going to be awesome. I know that.
It always is. So with that, we'll see you next week. We appreciate you. Thanks for watching on all of the different media. Dwayne Thompson, thank you so much for the thumbs up, the like. We appreciate you and look forward to connecting and having an opportunity to share more of the wisdom of the ages.
And we'll see you on the mats.
See you on the mats.